Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. Join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show. And today's show, I just want to warn you right off the bat, is I'm going to rant a little bit. And so if you're not into that, just skip to the next episode or previous episode or something like that. But sometimes, there are just situations where I find it's necessary to vent a little and rant a little. And what I'm alluding to is, from an investing perspective, we are oftentimes encouraged. I encourage you, other people encourage you, the media encourages us. But it also makes sense to look at data. Right? Look at how are things developing. If we want to, for example, find out, and we're getting into this phase now that we are reaching the fourth quarter, we're getting to this point where it becomes interesting to figure out what should we do with our renewals for our property leases. Yesterday I spoke with one of the leaders in one of our property management companies, and they have now adopted a process where they make the tenants aware that their lease agreement is running out about 4 months before the date, and then 90 days before, or 3 months if you want to, then they basically get in touch with the owners like me, and we discuss how much do we want to change the rent. Do we want to increase it a lot or not so much? And obviously the discussion is always based on data. And one of the things in this particular example with residential real estate is that we're looking at what is the rent that we are asking for a property right now, and what is the market rent in the area where that property exists. When you ask yourself, why wouldn't market rent be the same or close to what we are asking? The point is that sometimes what happens is that we have a property that we acquired and we get a tenant pretty shortly after or right at the point when we're buying it. And then it has a certain rent. And let's say we are deciding that due to certain circumstances or whatever the situation might be, we increase the rent by $30 or $40 or $50 a year for several years in a row. At the same time, we're doing this because maybe the tenants tell us year over year that they can't handle much more than $50 increase in rent. The surrounding area might experience a boom. So you end up in a situation where the rents in the area of a property you own have increased a lot, and you haven't really increased the rent a lot or as much because you wanted to keep the tenant who is nicely paying every month, and you don't have to worry to make and get your money. So if that tenant ultimately after 5 or 6 or however many years, I think the longest tenants I have are like more than 5 years in the property. If such a tenant ultimately decides, okay, we moving somewhere else or whatever the circumstances we're leaving, now you have a property that might be several $100s below market rate, and then you would adjust it. That's not the rent or the complaint or what aggravates me. What aggravates me is when we look at data like this, what is our number versus what the market rate number is, to see what's the development and what kind of decision do we want to do or make. The same thing happens for all kinds of data. But what it triggers and what makes me angry oftentimes is that we get headlines in the media that basically really give us the wrong kind of impression. What I'm getting at is that many, many times lately, we see comparisons 1 year versus the next year, right? And so, for example, I saw just recently in the context of residential real estate that there are 16% more single-family homes, new built, new construction single-family homes have been started in 2024 than in 2023. Well, guess why that would be the case? And that is not in the headline. In 2023, nobody really anticipated that interest rates would go down. For 2024, the anticipation of interest rates going down was very high. Some people were actually speculating that interest rates would start go down in the spring of this year. Now, we all know that they haven't, not in any meaningful way, but if you are getting towards the end of a brand new construction project, you have a pretty good expectation that either at the end of 2024 or beginning of 2025, interest rates will come down and you will have plenty of people who would like to buy a new house. But comparing that situation to what was 2023, is completely stupid because nobody had that expectation. It's even worse, and you all know that I'm a fan of Tesla and Tesla stock, and I'm a holder of Tesla stock. And auto companies, especially electric car companies, they have benefits and detriments depending on what the government is doing. And if the government says, okay, in 2023, there is a subsidy and it runs out in September, well, guess what? Everybody rushes to get their vehicle in August or July so that they still get the benefit of the subsidy. Now, what does that do in September? Many, many fewer vehicles will be sold because everybody that could and wanted to got theirs in July and August. Well, now in 2024, we see headlines like there's a massive increase in sales compared to last year. But nobody is saying, well, that massive increase is because last year, that same month, people didn't buy because they had already bought, right? So the context is missing. And that's what gets me up. And that what makes me angry is that we are now trending more and more to look at the headlines. And if the headline sounds interesting, then we go with the information that it indicates. And oftentimes the headlines are really, really not giving you the full story. So my plea with you is, especially when it comes to your investing, please dig a little deeper. Don't just go with one source and don't just go with a headline, but look a little deeper to really get the context, really get what is the situation, what is the data, why could the data be the way it is. And in some cases, it might be totally valid. In more cases recently, I find the data is not valid. It just makes for a good headline. And I find that really, honestly disgusting. And we should not fall for that. We should go to alternative sources on YouTube, on Google, and other places where people really spend the time to get you good information. And that is actually my goal that I'm doing here with this podcast and with our Substack articles and our newsletter and our videos and everything, is getting you good information that is thoroughly researched and not just a headline. So sorry for ranting today, but sometimes that's just necessary. I hope you be well and stay safe, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.